Hello and welcome to Turning Point Tactics, the competitive Kill Team 40k podcast and YouTube channel focused on giving you the strategies and tactics to seize initiative every turning point. I'm your host Ryan, and I'm joined by the man flew to our consistent delivery schedule, Connor. How are you doing this evening, Connor?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Ryan. Have been wondering, is this a sign that I should be playing more or less Nurgle Legionary? I haven't quite figured that out, actually.
Well, Grandfather Nurgle would mean that you can actually man up and carry on because you wouldn't feel that pain.
He's given me his blessings, doesn't he? Yeah.
So other than just drinking Lemsip, which Lemsip, if you're listening and want to sponsor the show, what have you been up to? Have you been thinking about Kill Team at all, or staying at home feeling sorry for yourself?
I've been, you would not. Obviously, you've been by my bedside this whole time. That's me
helping you through these difficult, troubling times.
No, I haven't been thinking very much about Kill Team, but you did take a couple of breaks from my bedside. Actually, didn't you, to go on some tournaments? Did you want to talk about those today?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I managed to go to Darksphere in London. Sorry, I just managed to inhale something. Oh god. Should not be eating
Grandfather Nurgle. He's coming after you now.
It's going for me as well. No, well, what it is the other tournament I went to was at Sanctuary Sutton Ashfield, and Jason always makes sure that you leave with chocolate every single time. And I thought then, when you were talking, I'd be able to quickly sneak in a little bit of chocolate and get away with it. But as it turns out, it has caught me right in the windpipe. Sorry about that. We're such professionals. You're over here with your Lemsip and just struggling through.
We should say there are other brands of paracetamol drinks that you can
have. But Lemsip is the preferred one. Sorry, yes, right. Back to Kill Team, right? That's what we talk about every week. So, Darksphere, yeah. I went 2 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. And they were all really close games. So, I managed to get a win against Commandos, which was a weird game because we sort of ran out of time. I'm not quite sure why we ran out of time because we felt like we were playing quite quickly. And then suddenly it was turning point 3 and we'd timed out. But I think it happened to quite a few people, so I'm not quite sure what happened there. But anyway, so I was up on points. I think it would have ended up being a really close game. I think it was like a few points in it. So I managed to win that. Went into Harlequins, which I thought was a draw. Hang on a second. Am I doing this wrong? Is that a loss? It was a loss, wasn't it? So I thought it was a draw because the guy I was playing against wasn't too familiar with his tac ops. He was doing Mythic Play. We tied up the game. At the end, I'd won by a point. Oh, that was it. I'd won by a point. And I was talking to him and I was like, it's really weird that you didn't max that tac up because everyone always maxes it. And I don't understand how you haven't done it. And he was like, well, it's because of the way it works. And that other, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not how it works. Because I played quite a lot of Harlequins. I was like, but I'm not. It's not my team. I was like, are you sure that's how it works? And we asked someone else, and he said, no, it doesn't work like that. So we corrected the score, added him his extra tack up point, which then meant it was a draw rather than a win for me. Which then meant I got to go straight into Felgor Ravagers. Now, what I'll say about this tournament, by the way,
that's how we honour good sportsmanship. Straight into
Ravagers. And this was like the absolute shark's den of tournaments, right? So the first guy, I should have said, is Nick Collins, who, if you guys don't know, you probably use his product already because you'll be on the Kill Team scorecard app by Crossfire Games, and he's the guy that runs Crossfire Games, right? So Nick's an amazing opponent. So he's really good at Kill Team. He's also very talented in the ability to actually do apps and design and 3D printing and all sorts. So anyway, so that was a really tough start, first game against Commandos, which I think is a really hard matchup for Exaction. Then into Void Dancers, which again is really tough, and we were playing, I think it was Loot or something like that. So it was just, it might have been Secure, but either way, quite a difficult matchup, and just didn't quite manage to get it. Ended up being a draw. And then I was into Felgor Ravagers, and I was like, oh my lordy, And it's played by Matt, and Matt's a fantastic player as well. So I go through this game, but I had a strategy of how to beat them in my head. So I managed to do okay with that. And then I was like, cool, I had these 3 insane difficult games. What's next? And it's against Serkan. And you've probably heard me talk about Serkan before, and he's an amazing player.
Solid player, yeah.
Yeah, he's a really good player from the London scene. He's running Chaos Cult, right? And the mission is capture. And I'm like, I think this could have been any worse for me as it goes. This is a really good opponent. It's a strong player, strong team on their best mission. And I actually think the rumours are wrong. I think Into the Dark's worse for Chaos Cult in comparison to open board, and this was open board. I'll explain why later. But anyway, so I gave him a really good game, I think. It came down to initiative roll for the last turning point. Had I won, I would have won the game because I would have been able to keep my Robin Ransack guy alive and taken 2 more on primaries. But I ended up losing by a point because I lost that initiative roll. So it was super close. So I think I gave him a pretty fun game, which is the main thing. And it made him really work.
But not exaggerated then, because everyone, there's a feeling at the minute that Colts are overpowered, but that sounds like a good tight game, like fun.
Yeah. So I mean, what I would say is that like the game. So I went 4 points on turning point 1 on primary, and then on turning point 2 I got another 4 points, and I got some secondaries, and then on turning point 3 I went down to 2 points. No, 3 points, on primaries. And then on turning point 4, because it was capture, he was able to just spend 1 on -1 APL control and just run his torments onto all my objectives. And so he denied me, I think, all but 1 primary on that turn. And that turning point 4 is what crushed me. And so, yeah, I don't really know what the solution is to that, because I said that's kind of the way their team's built at the moment. Well, we've suggested a whole bunch of changes that GW could make. But yeah, so like it's really weird because you feel like you're doing it and you feel like you're winning. Like 4 points on turning point 1, 4 points on turning point 2. You're collecting all your secondaries. You got 3 points on turning point 3. It's like I'm on for a 4-4-3-3 whatever, and it didn't quite work out. So I think had I played secure or loot, that probably would have been my game. But I do think exaction have some play into them.
Exaction
so So speaking of, I went into Sanctuary where I went 3-1 with exaction again. I think I came 4th in the end. So fairly respectable performance. My first game was against Chaos Colts on capture and Into the Dark. So I was like, oh, here we go. We're in for it now. But I just come out of that practice match with Sirkan effectively. So that was a really good game. And this is why I think, for me personally, Chaos Colts actually aren't quite as good on Into Dark, because you can do the really cheesy things, right? Like block off an entire corridor by placing 1 model just behind a barricade, and they can't get over your base, they can't go around your base, and suddenly you can just shut down 1 route, and then they have to open all the doors, they have to get through the hatchways, they have to fight their way around. Whereas on open board, they can just like run at you, and at the end they can move wherever they need to move and collect all these sorts of things. So yeah. So anyway, I think it's harder for them on Into the Dark in that specific matchup between Exaction Squad and Chaos Colts. Although it does hurt that you don't get any kills on turning point 1. I will agree with that. So anyway, I managed to win that. I went to Vet Guard, where I narrowly lost by 2 VP, which was a really close game. Tom was really good. There was one thing that I've realised that we played wrong because I couldn't find the FAQ. So it was in Death Atonement, and in my head, because he shot someone, charged and fought. And I was like, I swear there's something about that where you can't do that. I checked the errata for Vet Guard, and I was like, where is it? And it's like, it's not in there. And I was like, fair enough. I must just be making it up, right? So we did that. He hit my guy. I killed his leader. And then when I got home, I was like, wow, why do I have that in my head? When it's like in the back of your mind, like, yeah. I swear there was something there. And then I checked the actual core rules errata, and it was in there. And obviously you can't do that. Yeah, and I was like, damn it. So,
I can't remember exactly the wording of it, but
yeah, so basically you can't resolve hits in combat if you're incapacitated. So, which is fine. And it was one of those things where I probably should have known it, because it is a pretty, I'd say, common thing. I don't play Vet Guard much, but I'm sure. Anyway, so that one I narrowly lost. So then I was into Exaction Squad in a mirror match, and that was on Loot, which went pretty well. I've had a few practice games. So Mike at MGS Miniatures has played against me, and I've played against Kieran before, and I've played against some other people as well. So I'm pretty happy with that matchup now. I roughly know what's going on, so I managed to win that one. And the final game, I was against Chris, a mate from Knott's group, and he was running as Blooded. And again, we had like a really, really close, tight battle. And I think, what was it, like 17-16 or something? It was 1 point in it or something crazy. So again, like a really fun, tight finish, because he managed to kill my escort operative on the last turn. So yeah, it was one of those things. Like, I remember as well, like he came with his shotgun dude and just one shot my leader, and I was like, Jesus, the chance of that is so like unbelievably low. And then I moved my shotgun guy out and shot his Ogryn, and one shot his Ogryn. So it was just like, I was like, the chance of that is so low. So like, we had these like wild moments where absolutely like the weird, wonderful things shouldn't have happened, but they did. So it was an absolutely awesome couple of tournaments. Over the last 2 weeks, been getting together, playing with some mates, throwing some dice, having loads and loads of fun. And this is like one of the things that, well, I think we should go into it now, Connor, because I think there's a massive emphasis on this, which is now is actually the best time to play Kill Team. And that's probably going to sound odd because a lot of people are hearing from from the community about how the meta's broken, how it's not enjoyable in the competitive scene because you can't win, etc., etc. And I just think that we're maybe forgetting the key reason why we all get together to throw dice anyway. And I will say that as content creators, I think we have to be quite responsible as to what we say and how we say it, because we are some of the loudest voices in the community, right? So if we're amazingly up to 1,000 subscribers, and people are listening to us, and they're all pretty much in our niche, the competitive community of Kill Team, right? And if we say something like, if we say that the Kill Team community is not worth playing in at the moment because it's broken, that's going to put people off. And I've heard quite a lot of anecdotal stories of people saying that they're going to take a break from the game because they don't want to play into the current meta. And I just feel like it's a bit of a shame, really, because I think we're missing a little bit of what's exciting. So I sort of wanted to talk a little bit at the start about why I think actually now is the best time to play. So firstly, it's the TOs, right? So your TOs have been planning these events for months ahead, right? And they put their heart and soul into these things, and they really do try to make it so you have as much fun as possible. But it's only really achievable through ticket sales. So if people don't buy tickets because they don't want to turn up, then suddenly these events could disappear, and I'm worried that we're losing track of that as well. So it's one of those things where yes, there might be a Chaos Cult player that turns up. There might be one or two, there might be three, whatever. But if 60 of you turn to the event, then the chance of you playing more than one Chaos Cult game is like ridiculously low, and so you're probably only going to meet them in the later rounds, and you probably only play them once. So I've gone to 2 events. I've played against Chaos Cults twice, but I managed to win one of them, right? And I'll tell you what, that is such a rewarding experience when you manage to just eke that win against the faction that you're not really supposed to. And in our game against Serkan, where at one point in it, I was like, if I just win this roll, then I've done it. It's David versus Goliath, and I toppled the beast, and that is really fun, I think. And although you're going into it on the back foot, and that the odds are stacked against you, that can still be a lot of fun in that. So I think that's a reason to do it, but also I think you can now just take a slightly different take on it. And I'm saying to people, just try experimenting. Go for a bit of variety. I've been playing Exaction Squad, a team that I probably wouldn't be playing too much of, if I was trying to be a diehard win at all costs kind of player. But they're good fun, and I'm learning more about the game. I'm learning about their matchups. I'm learning to respect the Subductors. I think there's actually quite a few matchups now where I'm taking them, whereas before I was, pretty hard over saying that I wouldn't take them. I'm playing a bit more security tac ops, which is pretty wild. So there's all these little things where you can learn these new abilities, learn these new things, you experiment, you can have fun. You can bring new players in and you can teach them, because I've been going to some various new areas locally, and there's a local club near me I went to the other day and hosted a Kill Team teaching night. So hopefully we'll get 4 more players, 5 more players out of that, and then maybe they'll turn up to the next tournament, and you can grow the community, right? And I'll say this all the time about Sanctuary. I think it's my personal competition to Warpfire Gaming in the US with Ben Battle Brothers Tabletop, because I know he has a cult obsession with Warpfire Gaming, but it's my equivalent, because you turn up and it's just such a good crowd of people. And you just enjoy it, right? And they're winning sportsmanship awards, they're winning painting awards, they're winning, the community votes and all this sort of stuff. And I think that's almost more important than winning the tournament overall. And I think we're hoping to host a tournament on the 25th and 26th of November this year. It's going to be in London. And I think for me, the prize that everyone should really be trying to get above everything else is the most sportsmanship award, right? That's saying to you that you can place wherever you want to place in the tournament. But if someone says, I really enjoyed playing with you and I want to play with you again, that to me seems to be far more valuable than anything else, right? So that's better than first or second place. So I think that's why now is the best time to play Kill Team. It's very easy for us to, as a community, to focus on the negatives, and I get it, I really do. But start finding those counters to it. Start, having fun and teach new players the game, bring more people in, and just try and do something a bit different. I think. Any thoughts on that, Connor?
No, I think that's a great point and really nicely put. And I think also, are you going in there to win? I mean, we all are to an extent, but you lose the first game. Are you going home afterwards? No, you go in there because you're going to have a fun game, and you've got 3 more games, and you have a blast. And you've just played 2 tournaments. You didn't win the tournaments, but you had a blast. So maybe just reflect on that. It's winning is a part of it, but you can still go and really enjoy your weekend and have a good time.
Absolutely. And I said the weird thing as well. I think there was maybe 2 or 3 Chaos Cults players today. I think 2. At the other tournament I went to, there was 2 or 3. Neither of them got first place, by the way. So I think they ended up getting
interesting
second and third.
Did they get sportsmanship?
No, I don't think so. What are you trying to say, Connor?
Wasn't saying anything.
To be fair, I actually, I'd say, complete honesty, I actually did vote for Serkan for most sportsmanship because I really enjoyed the game. And I think that's kind of the thing, is we're losing track of where we're at, right? So I played a game against Chaos Cults. It was insanely difficult. I got it down to a dice roll. That was a fun game, and I'm happy with that. So, and Serkan's great to play against. So.
When they're that close
absolutely.
and that tense, I love them.
And that's exactly it. So, and that's kind of why I think it's let's not lose track of that, right? Let's not forget why we play the game in the first place, because that's really important. And it was really good fun, and I really enjoyed it. So that was pretty epic. I forgot what else you said I was going with on that thread, but yeah, it's been an awesome couple of weekends. Loads of tournaments, loads of fun. That's my point. I was going to say. Just come back to me. People used to turn up to tournaments like a 64-player tournament or a 32-player tournament, whatever. And statistically, you probably weren't going to win anyway. I went to Warhammer Fest knowing that I wasn't going to win Warhammer Fest. Sure, I had a shot and I might be up there in the top 8, whatever. But statistically, it's highly unlikely. And it's really no difference now with Chaos Cults. I guess it's just you're even more or less likely. But for 90% of players that turn up to these events, I don't think it matters. That's not why I think they're there, and I think they have far more fun doing the 2-2, where maybe one of their losses is against Chaos Cults, but they win some other games and have some loads of fun. And then also just imagine the bragging rights if you win, right? That's the other thing. Because we're talking to the other guy because he took Chaos Cults, and to be fair, he came second. So he did good. But I sort of joked and said the pressure's really on when you play one of those teams, because if you don't win them all, then everyone sort of goes, well, oh, you didn't win with a really really strong team. And I joked at the start, and I was like, I'm taking Exaction Squad. People are impressed if I just get a draw. So
I'm ready. Say, why didn't you bring Inquisition? That's what.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, why didn't you just take the Inquisition? It's well, they're fun, and they got some cool stuff. But yeah, so I think that's a bit of a recap for the last 2 weeks. I know we've been a bit out of the loop because I've been doing the club nights. You've been, being a wuss
on death's door.
On death's door. I mean, you got out of A&E like a few days ago. You're fine. So I think we're going to go into some Patreon priority questions. We have a whole host that we need to get through and answer. But obviously, there's probably some people out there that are listening that are thinking, "Oh, hey, I want my question answered on the show." If they are and they want to support the show, is there a way in which they can go about doing that?
Yeah. So if you'd like to support myself or my nameless assistant, you can become a patron. That'll cost you as little as £3 a month, which is enough to get me a few sachets of a generic nondescript lemon paracetamol flavoured drink. But what would that get you? That would get you early access to all of our videos, as well as some exclusive Patreon-only content, such as we've got a Discord set up now. We've got some battle reps on there. We've got a hobby section. That's quite fun. I love what seeing people can come up with on that. We've got memes. Don't forget the memes. And maybe you're still trying to pick up some Chaos Culture yourself. We've also got an affiliate link with Element Games. So if you want to try and get yourself one of them for a 15% discount, if you buy it through our link, then that's another way to support the podcast. Or even if you just hit like and subscribe and share it with everyone, that'll also help to support the podcast too.
Nice. I actually called up. I spoke to Russ from GFN today about that. I was just like, "Oh, very nice, very nice." So it's like it is fully started now, and it's really good. And if you guys are listening, you'll check out some Kill Team Bat Reps. Highly recommend checking out GFN Gaming. He's got a whole bunch of them on there, and they're really, really high quality. They're the ones that I wish I could do something like that.
They're insane, aren't they? They're insane quality. I loved it.
They're fun to watch as well, and that's kind of it, which is really cool. I was speaking to Jason, the texting him earlier as well, the Knots TA, and we're talking about how cool it is that all the competitive scenes are like coming together, and people are learning more and more about what other people do and that sort of stuff. And it's just really cool that you can see people connecting, understanding, and the scenes getting bigger and better and all that sort of stuff. So really, really cool. Okay, so we should probably get into some questions, Connor.
Yeah. So our first question starts off actually with narrative play, and they want to know, what is the priority when picking for strategic assets / rare equipment?
It's a really good question. So I've got a few thoughts on this, and the first thought is like, remember it's narrative, right? So from a competitive point of view, you can look at it in a sense of like, what can I do to like absolutely break this game? And you can find stuff like there is some ways to really break the game with stuff you can do. So you can make like a shredder have P1 or something. And if you're playing into the dark, and then suddenly you've got this 5 attacks, lethal 5, P1,
my God.
rending, my God. And it's like, good God, think of the children, or make it ceaseless. You can really break it. So, my first thing what I'd say is like just choose stuff that you think is going to be fun to play with, because there is a whole bunch of fun stuff out there, and you can really you can do a whole bunch of things that just enjoy your general fluff of the game, right? So, and then a lot of the narrative selection's random anyway, so that's probably how I'd start. The next thing I'd say that you want to look for is like deficiencies in your team. So if your team's not particularly reliable, maybe your shooting isn't very good, or your meta's not very good. Like maybe look at trying to get some of the reliability your team is missing. So things like the Cephas ability could be really useful. Like there's other ones where you can there's a thing called a Seeker Spirit, where if you retain a critical hit, you can reroll one of your attack dice. It's kind of like a pseudo like balanced in a way. That could be really good on like a block or a weapon with lethal 5, so you could then find a way of doing that. But you could also find, like there's like melee ones that have balance, etc. So try and find where it is that you think your team's lacking something, and then buff it to where it needs to be. If it's like raw damage, there's ways you can increase your damage characteristics. So that could mean that your weapon, I don't know, goes from being, let's say it's like a bolter 3/4. If you make it suddenly 4/5, actually that becomes really, really effective at killing stuff. You could make the shredder, for instance, 4/5 damage, and that would probably break it because it's insanely OP. But like you know what I mean? You can find where it is you need the element to be increased. And then with strategic assets, I think this is where you actually have quite a lot of options. There's some that I think are actually much better than maybe is given credit for. So one that you and I used was the engineering bay, where at the end of setting up barricades, you can select a terrain feature in 6 and then make it heavy, right?
Very powerful.
And that, so you can be really clever with this. You can drop one of your barricades down in a key route to make it heavy, and then suddenly it becomes obscuring, and then you obscure your whole team from a certain angle, and that's really good. So I really like that one. If you know that you're quite an aggressive player, maybe you like the Khorne style of gameplay, and you're always reliant on a turn 2 initiative, go for the reroll initiative option maybe, because that could be really useful. Or if you're very, very CP hungry, there's one for a free tactical ploy without spending CP. So, but that's one of those things where you have to like look at what your team does and then go, every single turning point I use this specific like tactical ploy, and therefore I'm going to use this, and that's going to give me the CP back to really use it for other stuff. So it's a bit of a funny one. I would say you really want to look at where your team is deficient and try to like work on that. I know this particular question from the Patreon came from someone that was looking kind of at the hand of the Archon. So I think that's for me in that team. I'd be looking at ways to work maybe with the pain tokens, because they're really strong when they have their pain tokens up, but sometimes they just don't ever get them. So there's various equipment you can get and a strategic asset that you get that can give you some more of these pain tokens. And it's very thematic. You know, it's what the team do. They have these pain tokens. It's a part of their inherent ability. And B, it's going to help with your reliability, right? It's going to give you a bit of flex that the team needs to secure the kills they need early on, and then be able to go forwards with that as well. So that's kind of what I would look at if I was playing that team. I think that for me ticks the narrative box of being like the kind of thing to do, and then B, it also helps you in game. And the stuff that I would stay away from is anything which is like XP based or casualty based, because actually the chance of you taking casualty is pretty low, and it's very rare that your guy actually fully dies. So I wouldn't worry too much about it in that sense. And if they do, you just buy a new one, and you're probably not going to lose too much. So and also, it adds a bit more to the narrative of it, right? Like if your guy dies, that's kind of cool in a weird way. So that's kind of what I would go for. But you played a bit of narrative. Colin, any thoughts on that? Anything that you think you'd add in?
I agree with everything that you said, especially them and our people dying. I think we smashed each other, didn't we? And I don't think, and also playing against Dad, nobody died in it. We got some cool injuries, which, as you said, helps build that narrative. Maybe consider picking your strategic assets from a narrative perspective as well. Try and think about, you know, what you're doing while you're there. Maybe there's some equipment there that just ties in with that and helps you gets more out of the games that you're playing and the missions that you're doing. One thing I will add, which is a bit Pathfinder focused, but that's who I was playing, but just gives a different angle. I quite liked, I can't remember what it was, but they basically got like a aerial drone that allowed you to do a marker light instead of activating a model. I didn't really care for the extra marker light. I got loads of them. But what I did like was that break in tempo. So, you know, we talk about Zugzwang before.
Yeah, I think it was OP.
Yeah, it just meant that I know that Ryan's doesn't want to make a move now, but I'm going to make him do a move anyway. And just I think it was 12, 13-man team at the time. Now I've got a 14-man team, basically.
Man, you went up to 14 activations.
Yeah, it was it's unfair.
That was really good.
Again, you know, we're playing competitive, we're playing narrative. I don't know, I can't remember, but
yeah. I remember that the fun bit was you winning, right? You enjoyed winning.
Yes.
Oh yes, I did.
Yeah, that was you. You were playing Corsair, and you got rare equipment every game, and I got none.
Yeah, they get it so fast.
Oh my word,
man! That 4/5 damage shredder.
Oh my!
Is something else. I'll tell you that much.
But one thing,
oh my!
I would say with regards to the strategic assets or rare equipment, if you are selecting it randomly, just make sure everyone's on the same. I think that's a good way to select it, but just make sure everyone's on the same page and everyone's doing it, or everyone's picking what they want, just to make it fair and stop squabbling or anything. But I think random's a good way to go. It makes sense. You don't really know what. Or
tell all your friends to do random and then just choose yours and be like, "Oh, I rolled so well."
No, you can't see the dice. I'll tell you what I rolled.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I got. Yeah. Alrighty, hopefully that answered that question. Do we have the next one, Colin?
Yeah, so this is now we're talking about competitive here, and the Inquisition roster specifically. What are your thoughts on the Inquisition roster, and have they changed since the data slate got dropped?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. So I was already a big fan of the RBTs and the Breaches. I am even more of a fan of the RBTs and even more of a fan of the Breaches. So I think those are the two auto takes now. I think they're the ones that you probably shouldn't leave home without. And then I think probably the Kazakhin. This will be controversial. I think you could drop them because how much AP do you need? That's kind of the question, right?
All,
like how much do you need to be able to kill on a turn? Because when you're packing a plasma pistol, a multi-melter, and already, and then you can bring another like either plasma gun or multi gun. Do you really need another AP weapon? Like, do you need 5? And I imagine that's how the team's going to get nerfed anyway. But the dual comms is lovely. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate that, but actually, like in my opinion, breaches might be better into that matchup because a cat can give you more activation advantage to reveal a model and get a shot off with a multi-melter turn 1, or get a shot off with a plasma gun turn 1, or a plasma pistol, whatever it's going to be. And that's probably going to be more beneficial. So I think actually breaches and exaction are the two that make the roster. I think Sisters Silence, I'm not seeing them on there personally. Maybe I should give them a go, but I think the Inquisition team themselves are already quite melee focused. So I think giving them that ancillary support wouldn't be too useful. Models that I think I've massively grown an opinion of is like the Quest Keeper with the massive chainsaw for 5-6 damage and brutal. Brutal is such a good keyword. It's so useful just for forcing through damage in melee, and it massively increases your reliability of killing. And he does that really well. So he's really good. The Deathworld Veteran's great as well. So I already think you have some good melee options going out there, and I wouldn't want to take too much more. So I reckon if you were to ask me if I could only have one ancillary support, it's going to be breaches, and that's who I'd take. So I think maybe taking just those two and filling out the roster options for them might actually be the best option. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. I think after I've done this little soiree with Exaction Squad, Inquisition might be who I delve into for a little bit longer, because they're so fun. They've got so much depth, and I think that they could be really, really interesting.
Valid.
All right, Connor, should we move to the next question?
Yeah. So talking about the terrain packs that we've got, what were some of the lessons you learned in the first terrain pack, and why did you make the changes you did when you made version 2?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. So we released the first terrain pack, and I sort of put out there my philosophy on it. So it had to be from one box of GW terrain that you would get in the Kill Team box sets that came out. And there was a whole bunch of like requirements from like mainly TACOP driven requirements. So there had to be enough or sufficient vantage points for you to score secure vantage. There had to be somewhere for you to be able to recon dash to. The vantage should be relatively exposed, etc., etc. But I ended up making a map pack, and the sort of the generic feedback was that the middle ground was quite exposed, and they thought it favoured shooting teams too much, and so, but it had very safe deployment zones, so you couldn't get alpha struck, but you were slightly more risky in the mid board. And people generically, the feedback was we'd prefer to have a slightly more risky deployment zone but safer midboard. And so we made version 2, where I did exactly that, right? So I brought a lot more of the heavy terrain into the midboard, and used mainly visibility blocking to deny, and some obscurity to deny the light cover from being alpha struck turn 1. But there's still teams that could do it, like Commandos can do alpha strikes, and it's almost impossible to stop, to be honest. So there's still ways around it, but that was one of the things that we did. So we went with that, and now interestingly we have this sort of like somewhat philosophical question, which is like, do we change it again? Like, do we change the fact that there's now some really strong melee teams? Because previously, like, there wasn't that many strong melee teams. I think like Gelipox was the only one, right, really, that was out there. Blooded is like a blend of melee and shooting, etc., etc., and it's same with a bunch of others. And now we've got this, like, we've got Felgors, and we've got Chaos Cults, and we've got Gelipox, and everyone's now going, oh, maybe we should go back to having sort of like the version 1 style, where the mid board's a bit more exposed. I think personally, I'm pretty happy with the state of the map packs. I think there's one thing I was talking to Jason about that I could change, is I might make so that one of the mid-board objectives only is covered by light cover, so you could shoot it with advantage. But I don't know. I think I think my risk would be is if you change it too much, you remove the elite's ability to play the game, because elites need that cover in the mid board, and that's one of the things I learned is like if it's too far for an elite to get up safely, they just die in their deployment zone, or they're too like stuck too far back to be able to do anything else. So maps make a huge difference to the way the game plays, and I think I'm fairly happy with where they are, but that's kind of like the lessons that I've learned is how much of a deployment zone should be safe, how many models should you be able to keep safe, and what's the payoff to them not being safe. Making sure that scouting steps are relevant and they can actually do something with it, I think is really important. And then making sure all the TAC ops work is kind of where I've been focusing on. But do you have any thoughts on that, Connor, or do you reckon that sort of covered it off?
No, you're right. I think there are a lot of plates to spin when you're building these map packs, and obviously with data slate updates and new teams being introduced, it changes and you get more plates. And my gut feeling is that the maps are in a good place. If I'm honest, I think they're not going to be perfect for every single team, but broadly speaking, I think they're good. But maybe this is something we should open to the comment section. Tell us what you think. If you've played on version 1 and version 2. How do you feel the maps are at the minute?
Which is better, yeah. And maybe as well, like because this is a somewhat philosophical question, is like what changes first? Do we change the maps now, like, or to balance out these new melee teams, or do we wait for GW to balance the teams out, and then because I'm worried that we're going to like double tap it, right? And we're going to go, we'll quickly release version 3, and it's going to be really bad for Chaos Colts and favors shooting teams, and then GW get the nerf bat out and smack Colts in the face, and suddenly you're back into Pathfinder dominance for the next 6 months, and then people will have the reverse reaction. So yeah, it's a tough one. There's a lot to think about, a lot to balance. I think you're right. Maybe some people in the comments can say below what they think they prefer. Did you prefer version 1? Did you prefer version 2? What changes would you make? Is there anything that you would add or take away? Any maps that you would tweak in particular? I think the thing that I would look at is, as I said, maybe making one of the objectives slightly more exposed in the mid board. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with how they play. So let us know what you think.
Okay, cool. Next question. And I got a question here from Ryan Slater saying, how much of your life is consumed by Kill Team? It's a weekend thing with occasional thoughts. Every free moment is spent thinking or playing, or it's all consuming. Work gets in the way. So where are you at? How much of your life is consumed by Kill Team?
Yeah, it's a great one. So I think about Kill Team quite a bit. So I would say, I think about Kill Team every day. I think about 40k probably every day as well. And I probably think about it for a couple of hours, maybe more a day. But that's like generic, like all of it. So, in the car to work, I might listen to one of the Kill Team podcasts. I might watch a bat rep from GFN. I might watch like Play on Tabletop. I might watch I watch like all of Glass Half Dead's videos, that sort of stuff. So I stay up to date with all of the content that's out there, and then I do think about it when I'm at work. And occasionally I'll be just looking through the stats of certain things and just trying to understand what certain interactions could work. But I do think so. Almost like for me, that's like more 40k. Like, because I do a little bit of like theory crafting on 40k in my head. Like, because I've got a small Custodes army, I've got a Knights army that's like in progress, and so those are the ones that I bounce between. I sort of list make, and then it might tweak something, and I'm like, oh, what about this and this, and then I'll go back and think about someone else and go into Kill Team wherever it is. So I would say that it's somewhere between a weekend thing with occasional thoughts to every free moment is spent thinking or playing. So like, it's a fine balance.
I remember because Ryan's embarrassed by this, so add 2 or 3 days to that estimate as well.
My shame is coming out, but like, because I have a bunch of other hobbies as well, right? So like I do quite a lot of gaming. I play like Apex Legends and some other stuff, and so I always try to play the ranked on that to get to various rank levels. And my other friends play other games, etc., etc. So I've got other hobbies as well, which I try to sustain at the same time. But this is the primary focus, and it is interesting since making the podcast, because now that we're making content for it, there is a little bit of like pressure to keep it up and to keep making good content, keep making relevant stuff. And so I'm always trying to think of what would be good and what would be useful and what could we put out and how would I counter teams? How would I talk about tac ops in a certain way? And I want to make sure that we do good content. So I don't want to risk at any point putting out something that's not been thought through. So I do think about it quite a bit, I guess. Cool. Hopefully that answers that.
Yeah, no shame there. Fair enough. That's cool. So, somewhat leading into the previous question, what is your favourite kill team and why?
So I've got a get out of jail free one with this, which is because obviously I'm an Imperium fanboy, right? So I'm just going to choose Inquisition because that's 5 teams in one. That's got the actual Inquisition guys in it. It's got Breachers, it's got Vetguard, it's got Kazakin. That's a free answer. No, but being serious, I think if I'm going to be completely honest, I think the most fun I've had with a team was Intercession Squad. And the reason why, I think, is, so people might not remember this, but if we roll back the clock, a year and a bit ago, whenever it was, when Kill Team first came out, elites were trash. Right? Like, elites were not good in the game. Pre-Legionary, no one was talking about elites, really. They were absolutely bombed here. Like, Deathwatch got a bit of attention, but they weren't anything. And then, Legionary came out and Intercession came out. And there is something so cool about turning up with this really small team and performing really well with it. Like, it's really fun when you know that it's like, I've only got 6 guys, but I'm going to take on a horde of 14 and still win, like that was really cool. So for me, I really enjoy playing those elite teams, and Intercession really was that flavorful experience that I wanted. Playing Space Marines, they felt like Space Marines, they were acting like Space Marines, and I really enjoyed that. So that's probably what it is for me. How about for you, Connor?
Very similar, I think. So I've always enjoyed Tau. I've enjoyed Tau. I love Tau. Got very excited in Kill Team when Pathfinders dropped, and they were insanely OP. Felt a little bit dirty about it, but still very much enjoyed playing. But then, I don't know, I think I just suddenly picked up Legionary, and they're just a really fun side. And I think there's something about an elite team where you don't have to think as hard. You've only got the 6 models to worry about, and you can almost relax and enjoy the game a bit more, particularly in that fast-paced tournament environment. You can actually think about moves a little bit and be a bit more casual, and it's less intense. And so I've had so much fun with Legionary, and I also like the fact, so with Pathfinders, obviously you get the Pathfinder team basically, but with Legionary there's so many operatives there, and then there's so much equipment, and then you've also got your marks as well. They've got a really huge toolbox to play with, and then that's when, thinking about previous questions, you can be sat daydreaming, thinking about what if I tried this into that team, and I haven't thought about taking that bit of equipment. I wonder how that impacts it. And then suddenly, because I'm such a nerd, I've got a spreadsheet up and I'm running the data trying to figure out how much that impacts it and stuff. So yeah, I'll go Legionary.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that Inquisition do that for me as well. And to be fair, it's actually been that for me, which is really cool. But yeah, Inquisition have so much depth, and they're a team I can really spend a lot of time thinking about. But there is something just inherently so much fun about playing 3 APL teams. They're so explosive, and stuff happens, and suddenly you're shooting twice, you're picking up kills, you're doing the objective concurrently. And they just have these really epic moments where suddenly you can swing the game in a single activation, and I love that about them. And that's what makes them really fun, and that's probably why I think that they would be the most fun team for me.
Well, Kill Team,
all right, Connor.
Kill Team Just Ian is around the corner, so We'll see how he does.
just
Yeah,
Ian and Ian's kill
it's just
team.
Ian on his one-man army.
It's just the captain with a power fist just going to turn up. His name's Ian.
7 APL.
It's just Ian and his mates.
Right.
That's going to be the new thing. Oh,
next
God.
question. So talking of teams then.
It's such a terrible kill team name.
Which
carry
kill
on.
team do you suspect could be much higher up our tier list if you played 30 games with them?
Okay, yeah. So this is an interesting question. So I think like I'm going to sort of read this question a little bit differently because I think the tier list for me when I build it is built based on having played those games. So I don't think it would change the tier list as such, right? I still think that if you're playing Harkin Salvages into Chaos Colts, it's going to be a rough ride, right? But I think that the way I'm going to read into it a little bit is if you got lots of experience with a team, like what teams could you make someone have a really hard time playing against that they didn't expect? I've still got 3 answers that I think are out there. So my first answer is actually going to be Exaction Squad. I've been playing quite a few games with them now. I'm probably up to sort of 15 or so. And I'm learning every time I play them. And I'm getting to the point now where I've realized they do not have a take all comers list. They are like quite literally the exact opposite. And how many shields you take, or if you take any shields at all, completely like varies based on who you're playing against. It's wild, right? And so I'm learning those lessons, and even TAC Ops, like I'm constantly switching between Seek and Destroy and Security, which is something I haven't ever done before. And so that's really interesting. So I think Exaction Squad are one of those teams where, as you play more with them, you can really learn some cool, neat tricks against your opponents that are gonna hurt them. So like, here's a perfect example. You have the dog, the Cyber Mastiff, i.e. Nelson, and you have the Leash Master, right? And if you APL buff the dog, right, the dog can then charge someone and apprehend them and do D3 mortal wounds and then fight them afterwards, right? So if you're fighting, say, commandos and they're a 10, or beastmen, they're a 10 wound model. Well, if you apprehend them, the chances are you'll do 2 mortal wounds or 3 mortal wounds, and they'll go from being a 10 wound model to an 8 wound model, and then suddenly your 3-5 damage profile will kill them. Like that's a huge difference, and that's like just one little technique thing that I've found playing them against those sort of like brute style teams where you can just suddenly take down a 10 wound model really effectively. And that's really interesting and really cool to me. So that's my first answer. I then think Novitiates are going to be up there. I think they're one of those teams where if you're really good with Novitiates, you can just guarantee stuff happening all the time, and that's so hard to play against when you can just make stuff happen. And so I think if you were very, very good on all the maps, you knew the layouts, and you roughly, or you planned all your movements, you could really get that working for you. And so I think they're probably a team that would put in a much better showing than potentially their C tier shows. And finally, I'm going to go with Harkin Salvages. I think they're one of those teams where you if you play an immaculate game with them, like you can actually really do some work, and you can really get them doing what you need to do. And they have so many like little abilities here, there, and there, and if you can min max all of them, and you can like really get them to work together, I think that could be a really strong team. So that being said, I caveat it as per usual. I still think that they've got inherent weaknesses, and I think that if you're always trying to play a team like without a single mistake to be able to be competitive, that's not a useful team build to have, because that's just hurts you, right? So yeah, but those would be my answers.
time for one more, or I'm looking at that clock and it's getting close?
Yeah, I think we've got time for a couple.
Cool.
Let's go for it.
Right. So, how does your TAC-op and kill team selection change when on open versus ITD? Are there things you prioritize more?
Okay, yeah. So, some great questions here. TAC ops and kill team selection. Let's start with TAC ops, I think, probably. So, the main thing about Into the Dark that I would say is it is significantly harder to get across the board. And therefore, the sort of the generic be within X range of your opponent's drop zone can be a lot harder to do. So you got to factor in your movement potential when you're looking at these sort of things, and how easy it is for you to get there. And you have to remember that turn one is very much like a staging turn. So you're probably just setting up into position turn one, and it's not actually all that killy and explosive. So that's my sort of first point. So remember how far away the board is, particularly if you're playing like lengthways on Into the Dark. That can be a really long distance to get, and based on where the doors are, it's tough. And another one is when you're selecting kill or TAC ops is understanding that it can be difficult to shift between rooms. So if you're playing, I don't know, central control and secure center line and all that sort of stuff, but the majority of models are on the left and right flanks, you might not be able to get back into the middle at all to achieve that. So you've got to be careful when it comes to these sorts of things. So that's probably what I would say on that. And then on equipment or kill team selection, I would say things like free mission actions exponentially increase in value, because just being able to move through doors freely is so useful, but you have to tie it to the mission as well. So it's even more valuable if you're playing like loot with doors, because being able to open a door and move onto a point and loot it, as a 2 APL model, that is so significant in comparison to say not being able to do that, because you have to have someone else open it and then you move on it the next turn, and someone's already gone over there and taken it. So that's kind of the way I would do it. So that's my main things when it comes to TAC ops and kill team selection. And then the next thing I'd say is look at blast weapons as well with what that gives you. And is there ways to try and get more out of that? So if you have, let's say, rending on your blast weapon, suddenly that becomes much more powerful. And suddenly, let's say let's work Corsair as a perfect example. You have rending, you have lethal 5 because it's now blast, and if you have a crit, you can retain a miss as a hit with outcasts. Well, suddenly that goes from being like an unreliable weapon to becoming a very reliable weapon, and very reliable and very killy, and that's really, really powerful. So before, where I'd normally take the blaster, the shredder on Into the Dark now is against a lot of opponents. That's really, really cool. But you still have to look at the damage break points, but a lot of the time I'd say that's probably one where I'd look at taking it. So I think that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think blast weapons have inherently more value. A lot of the torrent weapons I would suggest are still pretty poor. There's a few exceptions, but generic, yes, that's probably where we're at. So that's what I think my point of view is on that. Any fill-ins or stuff you want to add?
100%. Yeah, that sorcerer with his blast and splash 1 is just it's disgusting on ITD.
Oh yeah, ITD splash is just insanely good. So that's kind of what I'd say. So I should touch back on TAC ops. I think for me, I would look at what distance you actually need to go and how many obstacles are there to get in the way of you doing that. Because let's say someone just goes and sits on a door and doesn't open it. Well, you now have to go to that door, open it, kill the person that's there, then move through the door. And that's taking you at least 2 turning points. So, that is a lot of commitment if you're trying to get to your opponent's drop zone, for instance. And there's some that are board edge rather than drop zone. you have to be really aware if it's board edge, because board edge is so hard to get to on a lot of these maps. So for TAC Ops, I would say really sort of read into them. Stuff that's not necessarily tied to that is inherently pretty good. Be careful with things like the secure hatchway if it means that it's locked in a certain compartment and you can't get your main force to it if your attack goes wrong. Like if someone rolls really high and they just kill everyone in a certain room, well, how do you get models back to that is one of the things that I'd say. Unfortunately, Connor, it's like I think 10 o'clock at night now, so we're probably going to have to pause and hit this one again. The clock has defeated us, and I am pretty tired after a full tournament day. You've been in A&E and whatever else because
you wouldn't know.
You have a scratchy throat or something. I don't know what it is, but yeah. So hopefully I can get this edited and get it out for people pretty soon, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But was there anything else that you wanted to throw in, Connor, before we?
No, but we obviously
sign off
the clock's beating us. I can see there's still some more questions we want to attack, but we'll take a note of these. We've not missed them, and we'll pick them up in future episodes.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. We're going to reattack these patron priority questions, and we're going to keep bringing them in. And I've got show notes already about how to take on some Gellerpox infected and that sort of stuff as well. So we're gonna tie this all together, and we're gonna see where it goes, and we're gonna keep trying to put out the regular content because we've been a little bit quiet for a while, and I think we owe it to the community to keep going. And obviously the priority is getting the answers to these questions. So hopefully we're going to maintain a regular trickle of content coming through. All right, so that's going to bring us to the end of this episode. Hopefully you did find something new or useful whilst listening, and if you did, throwing us a like would be greatly appreciated. If you want to make sure you don't miss out on the episodes, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click that bell, so as soon as the next one drops, you'll get a notification as soon as it comes out. That really is one of the best ways to help a small channel like ours. And if you can't wait and you do want early access, we have a Patreon. We get exclusive access to all our content ahead of time, as well as access to our Discord and Patreon priority questions. As Connor just said, we'd always appreciate to hear your thoughts and feedback, so drop a comment below and we'll get right to you. So thank you so much for listening. This has been Turning Point Tactics. I'm your host, Ryan, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.